Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm Laura. I'm a PhD student at QUT, and if you've never seen the value of land-based, indigenous-led social enterprises, by the end of this presentation, you should be able to see it. This research is about bringing attention to the way that land-based, indigenous-led social enterprises create sustainable outcomes. The background to this research is that there is a global injustice when it comes to the impacts of climate change and land degradation. And as a white privileged woman in my real job, my real world job, I've chosen to use my privilege to work with communities around the world to address this injustice. And in doing so, I've seen how indigenous communities can maintain sustainable livelihoods on their land from their unique set of knowledge and their deep connection to the land. The problem is there is a general lack of recognition, including in Australia, of the value that indigenous people bring. So I have chosen to explore the land-based, indigenous-led social enterprise as a tangible way to better understand how indigenous people create sustainable outcomes for people and for the environment. There are two case studies involved in this research, and you can see the names of participants here, which I acknowledge, participants from the social enterprise Native Voice Bushfoods and participants from the social enterprise Nyanda. And in this presentation, all the illustrative quotes are from research participants. Nyanda is an indigenous-led social enterprise operating on culturally significant land in Nudgee near the Brisbane airport, on land that is traditionally owned by Madonna's family. You can see Madonna here, she's the founder. And you can also see her late mother, Caroline. Nyanda runs cultural tours and also develops products that are based on native plants. And for those of you in Brisbane, I encourage you to check them out. The other case study is Native Voice Bushfoods, located in the Lockyer Valley, about an hour from Brisbane. And they do amazing bush foods and also educational tour. You can see Tracy and Doug, the founders, here. And we'll share about both case studies in this presentation later. So starting with the literature review. As I zoomed from the social enterprise literature to the land-based, indigenous-led social enterprise literature, many studies focus on the barriers and the challenges that they face. There is this persistent, deficit-laden narrative surrounding the topic, and researchers are calling for a more constructive and optimistic view of the sector. So to address this gap and to engage with participants on a constructive journey, this study has been framed around two main research questions. How can research be conducted constructively with land-based, indigenous-led social enterprises, and how do they create sustainable outcomes as a second question? So moving now to theory, as you can imagine, considering my own positioning as a white person, I have gone through many debates and self-reflection on what is appropriate when conducting research with indigenous participants. So in the end, I decided to adopt an alternative approach between imposing a single Western theory and rejecting all conventional knowledge. So I've been mobilizing culturally appropriate method theories to challenge and reframe a conventional domain theory. So linking with question one, I've been leaning on the principles of indigenous standpoint theory, which acknowledges the cultural interface in which this research is situated. And I'm also leaning on appreciative inquiry, which promotes a constructive and collaborative approach. And regarding question two, to promote a strengths-based perspective, I've applied a resource-based view to understand how these enterprises create sustainable outcomes. So the resource-based view from Barney is an organizational management theory, and it proposes a set of resource attributes in support of a firm's competitive advantage. But as you can see in the sub-questions linking to question 2, I've been challenging the boundaries and assumptions of the resource-based view, and I'll share a little bit more later about that. Methodologically, this is qualitative research using case studies with 2 cases of family-led micro social enterprises. They both have, as I said before, bush foods and cultural tours as their main products and services offering. And this research is grounded in decolonizing methodology and using methods that are privileging the voices and experiences of participants, as well as prioritizing their benefits. So there are 3 touch points with each case, starting with a mapping focus group where participants draw a map of their enterprise, and then there's individual voice to give the voice to the individuals after having given the voice to the collective, and then regrouping at the end for feedback focus group to allow participants to give feedback on the findings, on the main findings of this research. And all along since receiving approval from ethics, I've been writing a self-reflective journal, and I've also reviewed some documents for triangulation. Just quickly on the analysis, I have applied 3 cycles of coding to the data in vivo, thematic, and coding linked to the methodology as well. And I consider that the mapping exercise was both a data collection and a method of analysis. So from my analysis of the literature, I propose a framework that specifically focuses on the sustainable outcomes associated with these enterprises, and I've named it the IECO framework, which stands for Indigenous Enterprise Collective Outcomes Framework. And I argue that when it comes to their sustainable outcomes, there are some dominant themes that are interconnected that you can see here. And one of the main findings from this research is that the IECO framework was validated from the data, and there was also an additional theme that emerged from the data on seeking to restore a sense of justice for Indigenous people, for which I've used the term co-equality. And all of that has been validated by participants as well. And you can see the quotes here from the 2 case studies illustrating the framework. So for example, enterprises have a strong focus on giving back to Indigenous communities, such as with creating employment opportunities, and country and culture were very dominant in terms of operating on country, but also caring for country, linking with preserving, protecting traditional culture. So I don't have time to go through all of them, but that's one of the main findings in terms of that conceptual framework. In terms of theoretical findings, you can see here that the attributes from the resource-based view were validated, and there was also some emerging attributes, such as resources being relational with participants, highlighting how they interact with the land, for example. So there's both a validation and expansion of the resource-based view. And yeah, that's the other case study as well, showing a similar findings. In terms of the flow of resources, there was also some interesting findings here, and I'm just sharing from Native Host Bush Foods here, but beyond the idea of owning and using resources, there was a strong emphasis on stewardship of resources and on the sharing of resources, and all of that linking very much with Indigenous cultural values. So turning to the mapping of the enterprise, which was one of the main method and a very important aspect of this research. This is from Native Host Bush Foods from the first focus group. And in fact, instead of drawing 1 map, participants ended up drawing 3 maps. So you can see here there was a timeline, then there was a more storytelling map, and also a concept map. So as I was trying to put it all together into 1 map myself, there was that tension between going down the path of a conventional diagram type of map, or embracing the idea of a more organic, sketchy map. So in the end, I presented 2 maps to the participants, and they were both validated. This one is the more conventional one, representing the resource system, with resources positioned across space and time on the axis. And you can see here some of the positive feedback that I received from participants during the feedback focus groups, which happened recently. And this one is a more experimental map where I've drawn different pods of resources to show the story of the enterprise and how it links with the sustainable outcomes themes. So you can see here as well some of the comments from participants, and this the positive feedback really validates the benefit of a systems view, and also the maps themselves highlight the dynamic nature of the map in the context of this research. So in summary, there are some emerging methodological contributions from this research. There is a whole piece around the myth and realities of research in the cultural interface. There is the map as a tool, as a method, and that is appropriate, that is beneficial for participants. And there is also a practical contribution for the participants. There are also some contributions regarding appreciative inquiry, but I don't have time to cover that today. But overall, there are a number of methodological contributions coming from this research. Theoretically, I'm proposing to extend and reframe the resource-based view of the firm and to start framing an indigenous resource-based view of the enterprise. So moving from the idea of seeking to achieve competitive advantage towards the idea of seeking to achieve sustainable outcomes. So there is this contribution of the IECO framework as a conceptual framework emerging from this research, and shifting the resource-based view as well from a view of resources that is capitalistic towards a view of resources that is based on indigenous values. And also in terms of accessing resources, there is this shift from resource control and extraction towards resource stewardship and sharing of resources, which was prominent in this research in the data. And also in terms of that systems view with the use of the map, there is a shift from the resource-based view, which sees the enterprise at the center, towards a systems view, which introduces externalities as well. So towards a view of people and country and wider space at the center, and not just the enterprise itself. So to conclude, I'll leave you with this question. Can you see it now? Thank you.